Good morning.
Morning.
So, we have a lot to cover today, it sounds like.
We do. Jocelyn and I were talking before the show started about who was going to introduce the show. And I think you were somewhat surprised when I said it'll just be a two-shot and whoever talks first.
No, what you actually said is it'll be a war.
Actually, it was a battle.
Oh, I apologize.
Not the
There
whole
is a
war.
difference between a battle and a
Just,
war.
just the battle.
Because you can win one and not the other. At least that's what I've heard.
We do have a lot to talk about today, though. It's a busy time. We have to talk about Biff, the Biff. I think you have to put an article in front of it, and how the Biff is failing. I think in the land of TLA's three-letter acronyms, Biff is my favorite one because it's the bipartisan infrastructure. What is the last one? I don't even know what it stands for, but it sounds right because it's, a swear word, effery. That's what it is. The whole thing is a giant con, or like the legislative equivalent of the character Biff. So that blew up this week. They're all pretending like it might come back next week on Monday. And everyone's pretending they're like, oh, I don't even know what's going on. And you're like, we've known what's going on. The Republicans are trying to drag everything out to hit the August recess to blow up the whole package. But we all have to pretend like maybe this time they're going to come to a deal, when we know for a fact they're not going to come to a deal. So the Biff, Jocelyn, I think is the first thing that we can talk about. And then what it is that we are fighting for and might get, and that they're trying to biff up. What McConnell is aiming the biff at is the largest expansion of Medicare and Medicaid, and the biggest ding against the pharmaceutical industry that has ever happened since the start of Medicare and Medicaid. So we're really close. This is this is goal line time. We can see getting these expansions across the finish line, but we know they're going to pull out all the stops right now. So that's all happening right now. So we do have a lot to talk about.
Well, and I'm glad that we're here today because unfortunately, I wasn't even going to bring this up, but I have to. So last night, I was at a beer garden, which I don't know if you guys know about beer gardens, but it's where lots of drunk people go to congregate. And this guy approaches me and he's like, what do you do for a living? And I say, you talk about the show a little bit. And he goes, why would you do that? There is no point. And he starts popping off on me about how there is no point. American politics are broken. You should just give up now. And I mean, I think about him. I can't.
What did this prince do for a living?
He's a government employee. So all this could be mine if I'm willing to engage flirtatiously with this young man. But no, and I've been thinking about it all morning, and I think that as much as this was clearly not the most exciting social experience of my life, I do think people like that, I don't know. I mean, I think that not people like that, because that's a little aggressive. But I was thinking about that as I was getting ready for this morning, like, okay, what can we actually tell people like that? Because I was mostly just giving sarcastic answers, and maybe that makes me a bad person.
Well, I think it depends on which way he's coming from, right? Because if he's coming from the learned hopelessness, cynicism that leads to grown men and women, but being libertarians and acting like 12-year-olds and being like, oh, the system's broken, so you should just exploit other people because, and whatever, like their justification for selfishness. You're like, oh, wow, what a development. You found selfishness and built a philosophy around it. Amazing. Or if there is a real cynicism, an informed cynicism that we have to fight against, but that's saying the government is run by a small group of incredibly wealthy people one of whom literally just shot himself just into the tip of space, on a rocket that, I think
Brings to mind.
had some issues. Mr. Jeff Bezos himself, and just the tip of space, Brad, not the mesosphere. It's a
Yeah, Brad
technical
wants us
term.
to know it's the top of the mesosphere, not space. Again, just the tip.
Just the tip of space. That's where Bezos went. But like that, that dude exists. And
Yeah.
when everyone's making fun of him for his literal penis of a rocket firing off, and then his stupid cowboy hat. I mean, like, come on, man. All made from exploiting workers. And then he's like, I'm going to give $100 million to two people. That's his PR. He just gave away $200 million. Like, there is an informed sort of backing away from a system that's so stupid that we're like, well, what can we do about the billionaire dude in the cowboy hat launching himself into space? You're like, tax him. Right. So there's less of him. That's really easy. Enforce labor laws so that he can't redistribute all of our wealth into his pockets. So what was Prince Charming's, like, what persuasion of don't do anything did he come from?
So I think definitely the informed cynicism. And that's why I was thinking about him this morning, because I was honestly just trolling him last night. Like, he was like, what you do is pointless. I was like, wow, I'm going to go home and quit my job. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. But I was thinking about it this morning. I was kind of feeling guilty because I think when you point back to what you were saying, Alex, we're entering a situation where, again, Republicans are engaging in barely legal acts of obstruction. Again, we are in a situation where things that are very basic, like so basic, like we shouldn't have to be protecting healthcare, infrastructure, voting rights. These are fights we shouldn't even be having. So, of course, I can understand a less obnoxious version of the cynicism that I was dealing with last night that's real. The sense that, oh, well, this is a situation we're given. Why fight? And I think what we do here on the show every Friday morning is remind people that there is a point to organizing. There is a point to fighting, because it's not like people were just like, you know what, guys, we should end slavery. It's not a good situation. Like, let's just call it. It's always a fight.
Always. Everything is a fight. And I think I would just say most of the, like, I get it. Some people are in a situation where, there's millions of people in situations put there by the bosses. The strategy number one is to, when you're exploiting people, is to give them no free time or free money that they can use to organize to stop your exploitation. So, like, there are millions of people in that situation in this country where they're just have to, face the grind to stay alive and care for their families. But I feel like this gentleman probably wasn't from there. And it's just sort of, in my eyes, it's sort of a wimpy stance to take, to just be like, well, we'll just let the bosses make everything worse. It also doesn't, like what Paul Farmer talks about, it ignores the fact that we win often. It doesn't seem like it, but we win often. Some of them we win new things, like what we're fighting for now. But we just won, there's this asshole atop the Social Security Administration that we have been talking about getting him fired for too long, the whole Biden presidency so far. Okay, he was just fired. And, like, I get a great amount of joy out of the fact, A, that guy's sad because he's terrible, and B, that he can't do the harm that he was doing, and real harm to real people, millions of people across this country on disability benefits and Social Security who didn't know if they were going to lose them and then possibly lose their house or their living situation. We have to fight. And again, not everyone can do all of everything. That's something that the left needs to really work on. Like, we need to allow people to engage in small amounts or things that make sense for their living situation. But like, sort of disengaging totally is tantamount to just giving up. It's just saying like, oh, it was too hard, so I'm not gonna fight. And right now is when the bosses and the plutocrats, Wall Street, this is what they want more than anything right now, is to just be like, everything's broken, nothing's going to happen. That's what the BIF is all about as well. The myth that like, oh, well, there's going to be some bipartisan stuff, and if that doesn't happen, it'll be another thing to show that Washington is broken. Wrong. The fact that they're trying to do the bipartisan stuff is the proof that Washington is broken. We have the votes to do the good things, and the other people don't want to do the good things. So get rid of those other people. We don't need them. Pass the good things that people want with the votes that you have. But no, we have to do this dance where, and we have to. Chuck Schumer has to, because Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are saying that they have to play out the bipartisan hand all the way to the end, which the Republicans are like, yes, wonderful. We blew it up this week. We'll blow it up again next week. That goes right into the August recess. Then we're going to get all of our Trump wackadoodles. Rent a wackadoodle. They'll put them on buses and they'll ship them into targeted states where they want to take the House and the Senate. And that's what they'll do all August long. They'll be like, Washington, D.C. is broken. And, they'll leave out the I broke it. Washington, D.C. doesn't work because they don't let it work. But it works. That strategy works on convincing people that they should just give up, and the wealthy and the powerful will be the only ones with access.
Well, as you're talking, so I wasn't going to share this story, but do you want to hear a crazy story?
Yeah.
All right. So, as you know, is it not July 23rd? I thought it was. What day is it?
We're reading our chats at the same time. It is. It says 25th. It's the third in the we're not supposed to talk about our graphics. I just said we should just get rid of the date because we don't need it.
Well, okay, but back to the point you were making, Alex, because it's, you're talking. So first of all, I know I say this all the time on here, but it's really important. Guys, if you listen to nothing else that I say, nothing, focusing on the positive works. And I don't mean in some toxic, weird, like live, laugh, love way. The way our brains work, we move towards the thing we're focusing on. So if you develop this idea that it's all fruitless and nothing matters and why even try, guys, they had like revolutionaries popping up in France when they had like very limited indoor plumbing and books were luxury items. We are armed in a way that other historic eras of revolutionaries could only hope for. We have all the information we need. We have this wonderful fire hose ability to communicate with each other at all times. A book I just finished recently that you should definitely read is Twitter and Tear Gas, where she talks about people engaging in mutual aid from different continents in ways that had on-the-ground implications for actions. There is so much to be hopeful about. And yes, of course, there's also, obstructionism, online conspiracy theories. We shouldn't ignore that. True positivity doesn't come from a place of vapid avoidance. At the same time, there is so much to be hopeful about. And sort of as a segue, so I actually ran into Jeff Bezos recently.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I knew that from your social media. So
Rio posted it, which I thought was funny because we agreed as a group to not post it.
That's where I read it.
And then I saw, I'm like, Rio. So I want to tell this story, though, because I think it's important. So my friends and I were in Greece. It was incredible. And we're walking past this group of people, this like bald-headed dude. And I hear him say to his girlfriend, like, wow, it's crazy how, this is just like the world, something normal vacationy, like, wow, how beautiful and wonderful this is. And then, but there's kind of like a bit of a vibe around this like little group of people. So I just registered that quietly. We're walking down, we're in Greece, we're on vacation. And then one of my friends looks at me and he goes, "Is that Jeff Bezos?" I turn around and I'm like, holy goodness, that is Jeff Bezos. And our friend yells, you guys, this could have been the biggest bird dogging moment of my life. Guys, it's Jeff Bezos. And just like that, we had security, like, it was crazy. It was crazy. This bald-headed man was surrounded like that. And so obviously we're like, we still didn't even know if it was or if it was maybe some other person. The next morning we read something in the news. Yes, in fact, Jeff Bezos was in Greece. But the reason I bring it up is because, one, I'm very annoyed. This could have been the biggest interview we ever did on Solidarity Live. But two, I mean, the emotional part of it for me is you realize these people are just human beings that are literally occupying the exact same spaces we are. And they are allowed to have this kind of power and superiority because we give it to them. Like, I know we're joking about him being launched into space, but he came back. He was only there, just the tip, for like 10 minutes. And it was like a very weird experience to literally run into a supervillain and realize, oh, this isn't some mythical creature. My first encounter of this, like some dude saying normal vacation-y shit to his girlfriend, And we need to really embody that as we organize. These are not superheroes. These are not crazy, materially invulnerable people. They're just random human beings that we have decided are allowed to exploit everybody else.
And you could have gotten such a good video with the old "let me just get a photo with you" trick.
I know. You understand why I'm mad at my friend.
Yeah, you hold it out as a selfie and then one arm around them, and then you just hit record, and you're like, so what do you got to say about exploiting workers to make $200 billion? And whatever happened after that, it would have been a get of like immense magnitude. So I'm just sort of rubbing it in.
You realize I'm already never going to forgive myself, right? Why are you doing this, Alex?
Well, one time this was when I worked at Media Matters, and we did tracking professionally, and I was helping build out the tracking program with a colleague, Julia, at the time, and we actually got Rupert Murdoch, and it's like still one of my more favored things. First of all, we did it at the Washington Correspondents' Dinner, which they're like, there's like a sort of soft agreement that you don't do that there, and I'm like, well, I didn't agree to anything. And that dude's terrible. I mean, like, seriously, talk about supervillains, and he's just a dude, but incredibly powerful because we allow him to be. And you track back vaccine misinformation. Fox News is, first of all, they have a vaccine passport system in their offices. Rupert Murdoch got his vaccine, I think, before the Queen of England.
What? I didn't know that. I mean, I'm not shocked, but...
And obviously, because he's a plutocrat, I actually think of the two of them, like, magnitude of evil, Jeff Bezos, because Amazon is so huge, but the, like, maybe intrinsically evil, I think Rupert Murdoch is eviler.
Totally.
Because he's like, you're not even clear why he does it. He must pray to the blood god and just be like, I will. I actually think that live, laugh, love is the like phrase that prays to the blood god that both McConnell and Rupert Murdoch obviously worship. But again, I'm joking about them in the part where they're just human beings. All of them get lucky, also born lucky, and then decide that the way to maintain and grow power is to exploit other human beings, and which is like the oldest. There's nothing novel about that. It's not like we don't know that occurs and what to do when it occurs. The people have to point at them and be like, "You're not the boss of me." And redistribute their stuff back into our pockets.
Well, and this is what I said last time. So, okay, subtweeted this, but guys, my trip was the first I took Latin in high school, which I told a colleague that recently. He was like, "Oh, that makes sense."
I was going to say, of course you did, but I studied Attic Greek in college, so I can read ancient Greek. So we're in the same boat of nerddom there.
Like very nerdy way to spend high school. But so I wanted I turned 30 on Monday. I wanted the last thing I did in my 20s to like kind of get back in touch with that part of my childhood. And so we did Greece, we did Rome, and we did all of the ruins, like the Acropolis, the Colosseum, the Palatine Hill, that kind of energy. And all I could think about was that this history of oppression and exploitation is so old. It is so old. It looks different every time. Sometimes it's, oh, the gods have made this man king, and that's why we must, light early Christians up like tiki torches. And sometimes it's, well, this man is so smart. He's this internet genius. We must give him everything. And it doesn't really matter what paradigm you're functioning under. It's old, and it doesn't have to be this way. And every now and then, people figure out that we have way more power together than we did apart. What if the ancient Romans had been like, you know what? Screw you, Caesar. We are not going to build all of this stuff for you. We're just not going to do it. We're going to live on the islands and be happy. That could have been a much better situation for that generation. I have to be honest.
And here we know exactly. So we actually just crossed the Gilded Age. I've long said, it's not unprecedented levels of wealth inequality. We've seen it before, and we know what we did then. We did many things, but we created Social Security. We created the minimum wage. We created the laws that protect workers' right to collectively bargain and form a union. And now that we've tipped, the pandemic is what pushed us into even wider levels of inequality than the Gilded Age. It's the same solutions, though. It's really simple stuff. And actually, what we started with, it's not just the healthcare components of the reconciliation package that's moving. It's the whole thing. There's more than just the healthcare, but the healthcare alone would be enormous in its effect of actually lessening the gap between people. These are policy decisions. They're like little spigots that you can turn on and off. And right now, since Reagan, Thatcher, and neoliberalism, it's just a fire hose of upward redistribution, where they take public goods, the commons, and they give them to their cousins, who then are like, "Oh, look at what I did. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps." And you're like, you just stole everyone's stuff. You just bent laws so that you could use our tax dollars or the people's money to actually subsidize broken systems like starvation wage jobs. And then, like all the trickery we know that corporations and bosses and Wall Street do in order to redistribute people's money up. And now you're like, okay, well, let's get some programs that redistribute billionaires' money down. We don't actually need the money to pay for things. Like, that's not how money works, right? In government, we just pay for things, and then that's just the way it is, right? Like, the money doesn't come from here to pay for that. But we do want to tax billionaires and corporations because we want less inequality. That's what we want. We want less billionaires, and we definitely don't want people worth $200 billion when millions of people in this country are worried about the next meal, the next rent check, the next child's doctor's appointment. These are policy decisions, and it's what we're doing right now. So back to your bro in the beer garden. I hope that he is watches the show and decides that he should get involved. And the biggest trick that the powerful play is to convince people that they don't have any power. But in fact, they're terrified of our power.
Well, oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
I just keep talking forever, Jocelyn, so it's not really possible to interrupt me.
This is the kind of person I like, though. I literally had to tell my boyfriend last night, you need to shut up and let me talk. Chatty people like each other. So I was back to the Palatine Hill and the Coliseum and all of that great stuff. All I kept thinking about is what you're saying right now, Alex. We are so much closer to the world we want than people have been at different points in history. We have very real systems of oppression that are acting against us, and I never, ever want to minimize that. At the same time, we don't get crucified for not sacrificing something to Zeus. There have been worse moments to organize, and we really do have so much working in our favor. And it's that lack of imagination, that cynicism, as you're saying, Alex, if it comes from being a single mom and you're overloaded, that is a very different type of energy and cynicism than, I just don't want to do the work. I don't want to fight for a better world. I don't want to learn about the legacies of heroic people who have stood on the front lines of social change and done the thing. So I'm just going to be like, you know what? It doesn't work. The government is broken. When have there not been selfish, tyrannical forces? Is there a moment in history where that didn't exist? Because I'm pretty sure that's just kind of how it goes, unfortunately. And I feel like I've gotten us way off topic. I know I'm still thinking a lot about the Romans. But back to the coming weeks, Alex, what should people be doing?
You're like, I went all the way to Rome. Now I'm going to bring it all the way back in one go. We can talk about Rome. I do think, though, you had it, slightly off because they mainly crucified people for not paying their taxes, which at that point was actually just Rome went out and conquered the world. And what that meant is they just forced people to send their money to Rome. And they called it, they're like taxes, but they had tax harvesters. It was at the point of a sword. And so the libertarians are like, see, I told you. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't mean that you're right, though. You're still a juvenile 12-year-old. If basic stuff like that is true, the powerful will use whatever they have to prey on those without power. And that's what they do. And people were crucified. Generally, it was the powerless when they did things that upset the system, that redistributed things to the top. The world's wealth at the time flowed to Rome. That's what created Rome. Rome couldn't exist without doing that. Right now, we have very similar structures where you redistribute people's wealth from around the world now, globally, into the pockets of a vanishingly small number of people's pockets. And we choose for that to happen or not. And we allow monopoly powers and cartels to form and all of these things. But the magnitude of change that we have right now that we can see is hard for people to imagine. It's so big. Just one victory on drug prices. So just breaking up the monopoly power of the pharmaceutical industry at any other time, that victory alone would be, the magnitude is enormous, and it helps everybody in the world. If the U.S. we empower the pharmaceutical corporations with all of their power. The U.S. does. I mean, you can say Germany is in there. They're holding things up right now. That's true. But if they lose here, it basically means they lose around the world. And that's not the only thing we're doing. It's that and a whole bunch of other stuff. And this is just in the healthcare space. So like we know at its very basic roots that it's the same stuff. It's rule by the many or rule by the few. And the only way that the rule by the few works is at the point of violence. It has to be some sort of hold on people, because otherwise there's just more people than there are plutocrats. And we can just take their power away from them. So it is going to be a struggle, and we won't win it all. And right now, the thing to do, no matter where you are and who your senators are and who your representative is, they can be champion progressives on the left. They can be Republicans. They need to be inundated with, we need to actually pass all of these things. And we need to trip up the idea that we need the Republicans in on this at all. We need to have them feel the heat. They need to understand that people are watching, that they're voting against lowering the American people's drug prices. Like that's what the Republicans are trying to do right now. They're trying to keep the people's drug prices high. And we need every Democrat to also realize that if they're on the wrong side of this, that's how they're going to be remembered forever.
Well, and exactly. This is again back to what's different now. They need us more than they've ever needed us. And it's very easy to take a small, out of context snapshot of this and be like, oh, they have so much power. Their power is way more mercurial than it's ever been. They can lose it. They still have to win elections. Which, yes, obviously there's so much about the American electoral system that is rigged and unfair, but at its fundamental basis, these are still people who need votes. And these are people who can be persuaded. And
yeah, or defeated.
Or defeated.
Right now, I'm more hopeful. And, I say hopeful, but I can also just put it in like gambling parlance. I really like wagering $5 on has anyone who's ever been near me or on social media with me. I love gambling on political outcomes because A, it checks my assumptions, and B, I'm super good at it. I rarely lose. One of somebody at Social Security works, the other Alex here, or maybe I'm the other Alex. He and me will put $5 on different variety of outcomes, but he's really smart. He rarely bets with me because he knows that he's like, well, you are working on this, so you have inside information on how things are looking. So I'm not going to bet you on the outcome of this. And right now, I would bet that we don't get just a little bit, that we get a lot. We're not going to get it all, but that we get a lot, that we actually pass something to the tune of, around $4 trillion. That is an investment in this country that it could be transformative in so many areas. The relationship of people to the government. That's what the Republicans are terrified of. So like the child tax credit stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
No. You keep talking. You were going to say something more real than I was.
The child tax credit, making that permanent, right? Which is this is what I'm talking about when I talk about redistributive policies into the people's hands. Having children is very expensive, and there's no support in this country, or very minimal support for most people. And then during the pandemic, we got a child tax credit passed, and now it's the attempt to make that permanent. That changes the relationship of people to their government and to each other massively. A long-term care system, home and community-based services in Medicaid. So that is seniors not having to worry as much about being warehoused in a nursing home because there's no system to deliver them the few hours of care that they need to stay alive. They don't need to be institutionalized. Or disabled children, families with disabled children who don't want their children to be institutionalized, but they need some amount of care. And we're going to build out a system to do that. I will say, here's like one of the reasons why you can't step away or look away. It started at 400 billion, which I will be the first to say. I was like, wow, that's an amazing amount of money. But I should have known, as Jasmine here at Social Security Works, she very wisely kept pointing out that is such a big bucket of money that they're definitely going to feed from it. And that has recently fallen to 150 billion, which is still enormous, but not enough. We need at least 250 billion for a long-term care system. So we're fighting that we will fight that all the way across the finish line. These are enormous policy changes. And I'm not even talking about the environment and climate change. There's a whole part of this that addresses, is the start of addressing some of our climate issues. All of it happening at once. And that's what, if I were to want people to know one thing about DC, it's that an enormous amount of your work is setting the deck up, setting the scene up. And it takes years and years. And you got to get this elected to do this. And you got to do, and all of it is setting it up for a tiny sliver of time where everything can happen. And that's where we are right now. The first 2 years of a Democratic presidency, where the House and the Senate are also in Democratic hands, this, like, best case scenario, Biden wins a second term, best case scenario, this is still the only things that are going to happen right now for the next 6 years. And then it's just setting up this stage. There's always lots of stuff that happens, but not these tremendous things all at once. That's where we are right now. A tremendous thing, Jocelyn.
I mean, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. It's why I think I brought up Beer Garden Man, because I feel sympathy for that gentleman. Like, we are at such an exciting point, and there's a lot to be working for and hopeful about. I mean, is that incorrect? I hope that doesn't sound naive.
It doesn't sound naive, because you're not naive, Jocelyn, as you know. Naive.
I'm really not.
Naivete is that dude. That dude is naive. That is a very naive or juvenile or whatever sort of thought process. Being able to look at a system and be like, oh yeah, well, that's broken or flawed or complex, just like every other system that exists is complex, and being like, and I'm going to still engage with that to do the best that we can do, that I can do, that we can do together. We don't need to take it too far afield in this, but it's also my problem with people's lack of understanding of public health stuff around the pandemic, is because people are like, well, it's not perfectly 100%. And you're like, nothing's 100%.
Nothing's 100%.
Public health is about creating a harm reduction setup where you're just doing better and better. You're never going to be able to reduce risk to zero, but that doesn't mean that you don't try to reduce risk. You literally just always try to reduce risk. So you're not looking for zero. Oh, the vaccines don't prevent all infections of the Delta variant. That is true. But is it preventing over 90% of the deaths? Yes. And you're like, that's good. It's good that the vaccines are working, and they don't have to work 100% because it's a complex system. And we learn stuff. So yes, people should be wearing masks indoors again, even vaccinated folks, because they could get sick. And everyone in this country under the age of 12 is unvaccinated. But luckily, Delta still does not affect children and young people as heavily as older people. And I'll just, the coda, the end of this will be, the main takeaway that we should all be having right now is not about, oh, the breakthrough infections and it's not perfect. It should be, why are we allowing the vast majority of the world to go unvaccinated right now when we know the vaccines work? They work at a magically efficient level. And we know that if we don't vaccinate the world, millions of people will die, and there'll be a new variant that could just take us back. It could end the species. Humans could cease to exist. And then hopefully, I hope that lemurs would take over. If it's not, if it's outside the primate family, I would go a different direction. But if it's primate,
hold on, let me guess.
Lemurs,
honey badgers. You want the rise of the honey badger?
Honey badger. There'd only be like probably 9,000 honey badgers and wolverines, because it would definitely be honey badgers and wolverines across the whole world, and they'd have enormous territory. They're very naturally socially distanced animals, both of which can eat the bones of the animals that they eat, which I think is impressive. So yes, if it's not lemurs, I'm hoping it's honey badgers and wolverines.
Wow. I mean, what a society, really, that would be.
They're also cute, ferocious, terrifying, and they're adorable. And I think people should Google honey badgers. If you don't know about them, I'm judging you. But we got to honey badgers through species-ending mutation of COVID. My point being that the idea that complex systems are messy doesn't mean you don't try, especially when it's obvious what we need to do, like is the case with vaccinating the world. We're like, oh, well, how do we do it? And you're like, don't let these plutocrats profit from not vaccinating the world.
Right.
It's that simple.
Right.
The question is always the same. You're like, well, how do we do it? And you're like, see that rich asshole right there who's making money by not letting the good things happen? Mm-hmm. Make that person the loser. And then we all win. And there's only like 1,800 of them worldwide. So you'd have 1,800 losers, and you'd have 7 billion people who'd be like, hooray!
But see, this is the thing. And this is, again, like, I think it's like my fixation of the month. There is something human in us that wants to make other humans exceptional.
Absolutely.
And it comes from, I'm sure, part of our spirituality tends to focus that way. Which, look, I'm Catholic, so I'm obviously not anti-religion, but there is a way that this gets aborted and distorted into something that is very toxic for the human species. We love the idea of billionaires and emperors and authoritarians and this one magical individual who, sure, take all our stuff, it's fine. And that is something that we have to fight within ourselves, both personally and politically. Because of course it comes up personally too, you know, like the most obvious example, romance. Like you meet this magical person, they're going to fix all your problems. No one's going to fix all of your problems, okay? Not a billionaire, not a boyfriend. And honestly, like the salvation of the human experience comes when we work together collectively to solve our problems. And that is, I think, a difficult place for us to land, but especially in a society which values individualism and hard work. I say hard work in air quotes because there is literally no one more hardworking than the working poor in America. Nobody. Yeah, even in other countries.
Jeff Bezos isn't the hard worker. The billionaires don't work hard.
I know. I just saw him in Santorini.
Yeah, which is a great place. Definitely. A few things on that, and I like the discussion where we are on it because it really is about what we're trying to do in DC right now with these policy wins against a deep-seated human desire for someone else to fix their problems. You said no billionaire, no boyfriend, no. In fact, there's only one person who can fix your problems. It's you. Working with other people collectively, we can, but without your action into it, it's impossible that somebody can fix all of the problems, all of your problems or my problems. So that's a key thing of why it's important that everyone is involved. But there's this deep-seated thing, probably from, it's ingrained in childhood, where we want somebody to be the parent who just like makes everything work. It explains literally Donald Trump, a whole bunch of people who are just like, I mean, this man is a bumbling idiot. He's right. I mean, like he loses on everything. He won like a few things, but if you look at it, the dude's a loser. But somehow people have created this image of him as this winner, as this Ubermensch who can, I also think of it as the James Bond thing, right? Or the Jason Bourne thing, where people are like, oh yeah, there's these superhuman super soldiers fighting these mythical battles. And I'm like, I live in Washington, D.C. I run into people who work in intelligence security. Like, I've met some very dumb people who are the ones who are supposed to be in charge of that. Like, who are just totally wrong. And at the macro level, they're all just normal people. All systems are filled with people. The system can be really bad, and it will, it's the banality of evil that we talk about. We want to offload work and responsibility onto individuals, and just be like, okay, well, I'll do what you tell. It's a deep rooted thing, and that's why I judge the beer garden guy, who I hope is real and not mythical, because
he's painfully real.
So yeah, I judge that guy because it leads to that. That's the exact type of juvenile response that actually says, I don't want to take responsibility for anything. So I'm going to wash my hands of this. And you're like, you can't. You're part of this. The system doesn't care what you think. You are part of it. It is going to affect you no matter what. So at least have the dignity to fight for it to work better for you, and not for Jeff Bezos going to the tip of space after he visits Santorini. It's like, this is just basic stuff to me. Like, at least have the dignity to not be like, oh, well, what are you going to do about it? The billionaires are walking all over us. You're like, well, stop letting them walk all over you. I don't know, put on a pointy hat or something, whatever it is to keep them from walking on you.
Well, and it's, I love that you bring this up, because we always come back to the Paul Farmer discussion with this specific point, but I think it's important.
That's because that was an awesome discussion, Josh.
It was an awesome discussion.
It was really needed at that time, too. That was like deep, dark points of the beginning of the pandemic, and he was a really amazing person to talk to then.
An amazing, because look, the past 2 years, every month feels like its own epoch. Everything is happening in such a rapid way. But what he said, for those of you who missed it, is that we do win. When we invest in public health, we win. When we invest in each other, we win. When we take on corporations with the moral wind at our backs and we take the fight seriously and we are diligent and organized, we win. And the second part was happiness. Like, he's such an upbeat guy. And, we were talking to him about that. Like, how are you so positive?
About, and we had him on to talk about his book about Ebola. And, right? I mean, it was like some dark, like, death, terror, scare, right? It's a lot. And he was just like, yeah, but when we work together, it's really amazing. It's actually not a yeah, but, because it acknowledges that life is terrible in many places. The longer you live, the likelihood that you're going to encounter the terribleness of life goes, right? I mean, we all know that. But the life is beautiful side of things is so amazing. And we know that when we work to get to that side, we get there, we win. That was a really, I think it's me. I'm not supposed to lean. I don't know why. It's
probably me. I'm a disaster. I'm always like,
we're reading our production notes on air today for some reason, Jocelyn. I'm going to toss it back to you by saying I also will, and you might be mad at me for this, but Jocelyn was pretty nervous for that Paul Farmer interview.
Oh no, I was super nervous.
Yeah, and I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, it was a lot," and we were doing a pre-show call, and she's like, "Well, what?" And I'm like, "Jocelyn, you've literally read every single one of his books. No one, even Paul Farmer, has read every single one of his books. He's read all of them. Of course, it's going to be an informed, good discussion." And then you stacked all of his books on your desk for the discussion, and he's like, "Wait, have you read all of my books?" So, and the answer is yes. I haven't read all of them. I've read many of them because it's actually foundational to what I do. Paul Farmer is foundational to what I do. The idea of pragmatic solidarity. It guides us in what we do. It's not theoretical stuff that we're talking about. It's actually improving people's lives right now as we build a better system. And that's the huge part of, yes, life is complex, and it's not going to work all the time. And that's just the way it is. But you focus on, okay, well, when does it work? Oh, it works when we work together and stand against the powerful interests. That seems to be a recurring theme for thousands of years. Like, let's do that then.
Well, and so I have so much I want to say. Oh, but yeah, you guys.
And only 7 minutes to say it, Jocelyn.
Gosh darn it. I don't know if you guys realize this, but talking to Alex and Paul Farmer was the best hour of my life. I apologize to any men who are insulted by that comment. But what I was going to say, and I actually think that, look, the psychological and political always are together. The personal is always political. And one thing that really strikes me the older I get, I was journaling about this a lot in my I'm about to turn 30 introspecting moments, is that when you're young, like really young, like a teenager, you think, oh, I will feel happy when I have all these leftist victories. But then you get older and you realize it's the struggle itself and it's the investment that actually does bring joy, which is not why you should do it, right? There's a lot you could say about people who use political organizing as therapy, and that is not what I am about. But at the same time, when you give yourself over to the moral struggle for the things you believe in, you are going to be so much happier than Beer Garden Man, who verbally harasses unsuspecting women who just wanted a gin and tonic on a Thursday evening. Like, it's just such a better way to live. And we talk so much about, like, can we win? Will we lose? And one of the biggest moments of my development was when I realized whether we win or lose, you want to be on the right side of history regardless. And you don't want to have to tell your children and or grandchildren that while the world was burning, you were just like, yeah, man, what can you do? Yeah, you know it's true, though.
That's exactly correct. You definitely don't want to have to, your children would savage you on that. My kids would be like, what? Super lame, Dad. I will also point out, Jocelyn, and I'm sure you know, but I will say that 30 is super young, and 30s are amazing for sure because you get a lot of you can just leave meetings. I think in DC after you're 30, you're just like, well, this is worthless, and just like walk out. I started doing that younger, and it's like one of my best traits is just being like, oh no, this is a waste of my time, and just leaving. But at 30, you can slam your hand on the table and be like, this is a waste of my time and all of yours, and then walk out. Like, it's not just a magical number, but it kind of is as well. So what a great time if we have this epoch change. Maybe it's your birthday that's bringing it all in.
Makes sense, yeah.
Next week is going to be the week. Well, actually, if you want my actual prediction of what's going to happen, it's supposed to be next week, but it's probably not, because this is how I win money betting on political outcomes. They're gonna biff up the beginning on your birthday, And then they're going to be like, oh, who could have foreseen that the Republicans are negotiating in bad faith? And you're like, all of us. It's what
We
we've
could
been
have
saying.
foreseen.
But luckily, the partisan Democratic organizing on the Hill has been happening. So they're ready to go, but it'll probably push into the August recess. And Schumer will actually not let the senators go home because senators not being let go home is actually one of the largest motivators to action that this town has. And I don't think people can comprehend it. But like somebody on Monday who is like, I will defend not doing the good thing to the ends of the earth, right? Like they on Friday when they're like, what do you mean I can't go home? I was going home. And actually what it is they have political fundraisers in the August recess all set up. That's when they do their politicking. And that bends more, you get more votes at that point than almost anything else. So I think it stretches into the next week. And then actually we get a good amount of what we're fighting for with all Democratic votes. And the bipartisan thing is totally revealed as bunk. And then the Republicans immediately start messaging that actually all the good things are bad. But if you look what happened with the child tax credit, you'll see that's actually hard when you're doing actual good things. When you give into them and you do only moderately okay things, like we saw happen in the Obama administration over and over again, where the Republicans made something worse and then voted against it at the end anyways, right? Then they turn around and they're like, oh man, that thing is bad that I made bad, but yep, it's bad. If we do good things and then go home and they're like, hey, did you like that money that was sent to you and is in your pocket now? Yeah, awesome. That was us. These guys, nope, they fought it. Oh, do you like having your teeth checked and admitting that eyes and ears are part of your body? That was us, not those guys. That is the exact place we want to be. So I actually think we're getting there, and the biggest danger is the BIF. So if people really want to do something right now, it's to call, especially your Democratic senators, and everyone can contact Leader Schumer as well. He's the leader in the Senate, so he cares about his constituents more. They all do, but say the bipartisan thing is wasting our time. And we demand that you get on with the work of passing Medicare expansion, home and community-based services, Medicare negotiation, child tax credit, Medicaid expansion. It's going to be like a 4,000 bullet list that you're going to read to them. Or just pick your favorite one and call about just that.
I have nothing to add to that. That was exceptional.
Well, we can just say goodbye then.
Actually, hold on. I do have one thing to add to that. No, I can't add to that. That's good. For my birthday, because I know how much you all are invested in my personal milestones, please do everything Alex just said.
Yes, as a birthday present to Jocelyn. And Beer Garden Man, if you're listening, I hope
I've got to find him and send him this link.
I hope you find a better path. You'll be happier. Look how much we're laughing. We're laughing as we're fighting. The happy warrior is a much better place to be than the I can't do anything about everything. And with that, why are we the happy warriors? And we know we can do everything because we understand the concept of solidarity. We understand that when we raise our voices together, when we act together, we can beat all of the plutocrats and all of their money and even their phallus rockets and everything like that. Nothing stands in the way of people power when we are organized, when we are strategic. So we'll talk to you again next week on Solidarity Live.
Bye.